Has anybody been keeping up with Chumash? Knows what's going on a little bit.
Mm-hmm. A little bit.
Kind of. Let's have. Okay, Alana, give me a kind of. First of all, what's the name? What's the parshas?
Tazria Metzorah.
Right, we have Tazria Metzorah. Okay, it's really nice, by the way, when they're together, because even though it makes the learning a little bit, what?
Rush.
I was going to say long, but rushed is probably the effect of the long. Even though but thematically they work very well together. When you have them separate, it becomes a little bit more schleppy. Okay, so Tazria Metzorah. Tell me one thing that's happening in the parsha.
Saras.
We have tsaras going on over here. And the majority of the parshas are talking about tsaras. Nachama.
We have the impurity from childbirth.
Okay, impurity from childbirth. Pass. Okay. Sophie, want to go with something? I mean, the truth is that's a lot of what's going on over here. It just
goes into like the specific.
Really? So many details, right? Like so many details, and I'm like.
And the body, and the house, and the skin,
and
the clothes.
Right. So you have like this. So we have. So generally speaking, what do we have going on over here? Tazria is going to start the conversation about. First, it starts off as Muhammad said, what happens if a woman gives birth, and the tuma, and I'm going to use the Hebrew word specifically that happens when she gives birth, and what is her process of tahara? How does she? And I'm going to repeat my cumbersome translation of tuma and tahara as accessible for holiness and inaccessible for holiness. And one of the things that's very interesting that Rabbi Steinsaltz points out is like tuma and tahara are chukim. They're not laws we actually have. We don't know what why they are the way they are. But one of the things that he points out is that because he's like, why would there be any kind of tuma if a woman gives birth? It's like the most amazing thing that could possibly be. And why would there be any kind of tuma when a woman gives birth? Give me 1 second. And is it a question or a comment?
It's a comment.
Okay, give me a second. And one of the things that he points out is that tuma very often is manifest when there's like a break in a force field. And the greater the force field is, the more jarring the break. So we talk about, the Talmud tells us there are 3 things that only Hashem keeps the keys to. Childbirth, sustenance, and rain. That means when you give birth, Hashem is right there. And we talk, the Talmud talks about that the baby in the womb learns all the Torah. So there's this so much amazing light that's going on when a woman gives birth, and when that child is born and that light goes away because it was all there sort of fostering the baby, for lack of a better term, that break is very, very, very jarring. And he says, is that possibly part of the reason that we have such a phenomenon as postpartum depression? Because there is this incredible light that's been in the woman and around the woman for such a long time, and then boom, like very suddenly, as long as anybody's birth is, it's still very sudden, I promise you. So that kind of like jarring thing is where you do have this place of tuma. Comment, Nachama.
It's fine.
Okay. Beseder.
What do you mean? A break in the force field?
There's so much light. There's so much light. There's so much connection. There's so much life force. And when that stops, like the more the light was, the deeper the tuma is. We know that there are different levels of tuma, and it's interesting. And he points out, and we mentioned it last week, but there are certain things that their life force and their source of vitality is so low to begin with. They don't actually have any kind of tuma when that life force goes. And he gives the example of a snake. That a snake is such a lowly creature, even in its life, that it has no tuma when it leaves. Because there's no break in that. It's almost like...
You're saying a dead body is a snake? Is not...
A snake, not a live body, not a dead body of a snake, do not give off tuma. I mean, they're gross, but... That's my personal thing. So depending on different things have different stuff. So he was pointing out that the place of a snake is almost like, he says, we talk about the idea that sometimes, the Talmud tells us that sometimes wicked people in their lifetime are called dead, right? A tzaddik is called alive after he passes, and a wicked person is called dead even when they're alive. Because even when they're alive, they're so not connected that it's almost like they're almost like a walking dead person. They're alive, they're making the motions, they're doing everything, but they have no connection to Hashem because of their behavior. So he uses that, he says like a snake is like that, like it's so disconnected that even it doesn't have any tumah after it passes away. Yes, I don't say a snake doesn't pass away, you guys. I don't know, whatever.
So, one of my teachers at Neve said that like it's basically like this, like the energy of life is like so overfull, like you're so overfilled with it. It's like it's spilling out of you, and then when all of that energy exits, it leaves a vacuum. And so it's like the vacuum, and like that's what happens when somebody dies too. Like now this body is a vacuum, and the vacuum can like conduct positive or negative energy, which is why you have to be like consider it like a source of contamination, and like why postpartum depression can happen, because like negative energy can get into that vacuum or positive energy.
Right. So I'm gonna just finesse it a little bit, because it's not a question of negative energy or positive. There might also be a negative energy, positive energy, but the place of Tumah and Tahara is a spiritual force that it's not like, oh, if I think enough positive, then I will ward off the negative. Like, that's not the situation. You're right, it does. The exiting of life does create a vacuum that automatically is going to be filled with Tumah, which means that I'm now inaccessible to holiness. And then what's the process of how do I get out of that? But I just, the only reason I'm not pushing back, but I want to fine tune it, is because it's not like, oh, I could do something and I could change it. Yeah. I can't. I can afterwards do something. There's a process that we become tahar, that we become accessible to holiness, but that isn't, it's not like, oh, well, you're such a slacker. Like if you would have had some more joy in your birth, then everything would have been fine. No, that's not. And I'm nervous that shouldn't come across. Like it's an automatic cause and effect. Okay, you're right that the life leaving causes this vacuum, which creates this tumah. Okay, Beseder. Then take a look in the pasuk if you have chapter 12. Actually, it's not. It's the beginning of chapter 13. Okay. And so Hashem says to Moshe and Aaron, Adam ki hiye ba'or b'saro, if a person has on their skin, and then it goes into like seis and sapachas and like all these like colors and textures and things, and for people who are a little bit squeamish, maybe, there's like a lot of detail. There's a lot of detail about how big, how deep, to what extent, and it's spreading, and it's not spreading, and it's white, and it's purple, and then it has right? There's a lot of detail here. I want to just say, first of all, that we cannot, from just the psukim, come to any kind of conclusion about what is or what isn't saras. But I want to start off with this conversation that the Alter Rebbe talks about, that when it talks about Adam ki ba'or basar, that a person, if you have something on your skin, this, whatever it's going to be, if there's different names for the tzaras, sapachas, beheres, blah, blah. And the Alter Rebbe stopped and he says, pause a second. What kind of person can get tzaras? What kind of person can get tzaras? And the Alter
Rebbe doesn't talk about it. I mean, maybe it talks about it at the end of the book.
Well, the Alter Rebbe is going to start right here. It says, Adam ki ba'or basaro, a person. Now, one of the things that we know that there are many words to describe a human being. Okay? You have an ish, you have an enosh, you have a gever, you have an adam. What is the most exalted title for a human being? Adam is an adam. So the Alter Rebbe is saying, wait a second. What is this tzaras situation that we're talking about? Who is able to get it? First of all, he's saying it's adam. It's coming to somebody who is extremely spiritually sensitive. This is somebody who's and we say adam, we don't mean a man versus a woman. We are just talking about the level of persona or what.
Yeah.
the level within within mankind. Yes is mankind, but I'm saying even within mankind, there are different ways that we describe a person. When we talk about an ish or a gever or enosh, we're not talking about super spiritually sensitive. When we talk about Adam, the title Adam means that you are a very spiritually sensitive person. So now we want to say, whoa, what's happening over here? And we'll sort of tie this conversation with this is where we're gonna make sense of this challenge. I promise you. I hope. So first of all, there's a conversation that goes on in the sages about what is tsaras, right? It's very poorly translated as leprosy. Okay, leprosy is an extremely contagious skin disease. And in fact, in Jerusalem, maybe like a 25-minute walk from here, there is the remnants of a leper colony. Okay, the way leprosy worked was that they had no way of dealing with it, so they basically put all the lepers together, and they would just sort of like, it would just run its course. I don't know what happened, but there was actually a leper colony in Jerusalem. Tsaras is not leprosy. It's not. It has a physical. It is a physical manifestation, but the reason that we say that it's not leprosy, for many reasons, is because there are in fact times that you would not. We're going to get into this in a second, but there are times where you would not examine somebody to see if they have tsaras. Now, if this is a contagious disease, like, we don't care what's going on. If we think that you have something that's going to contaminate the people all around you, we don't care what else is happening in your life. And the Talmud very clearly tells us that we're going to what?
Or at like times of simchas, like if marriage
Exactly. So the Talmud tells us specifically that a chassan or a kala for the week of their wedding, the week before and the week after, we do not examine them for tsaras. During the high holidays, when people are oile regel, we do not examine anybody for tsaras. Now, if this was so contagious, we would, right? My niece and nephew got married at the beginning of Corona, and it was before, like, you know how many people got Corona at that wedding? Because, like, it was before they were mandated, whatever, right? There's all these kind of things. If tsaras was something super contagious, you wouldn't say, you know what, it's inconvenient for your life right now, we'll just let it go. We're like, no, we're going to pull out all the stops and okay. So this is kind of sort of highlighting some of the pieces that this is a physical manifestation of a spiritual situation. Okay? And how do we do this? What happens? What happens over here? What's the tsaras progression going on over here? So first of all, in the Torah, it tells us if a person gets tsaras, and it gives different kind of things, whites, spots, or burn through a burn or whatever. Then it goes and it discusses if you get tsaras on your clothing. What happens if you get tsaras on your clothing? And then it goes on to what happens if you get tsaras on your house. What are the walls of your house? I know, Rishi, you think you have tsaras on the walls of your house. I know, but so, huh?
Might get money out of it.
Might get money out of it, right? So what happens? But what actually happened? What exactly? Yeah. No. Say.
If there's tsaras in your house on the walls or something, it means that like there's money there.
Possibly, not for sure, but possibly.
Because what we learned about it with Tehillah.
Could be.
We learned that we read in Nach about the Amorites.
Yes.
That they before they fled, like, hid money and gold and jewelry in the walls of their houses.
Exactly.
And that's one of the reasons why we get straw on our houses, is so that we would knock down the houses and then get the money from inside the walls that they hid.
Exactly. So yes, good. You're putting pieces together. Thank you, Sophie. Okay. So what am I saying? So the Torah goes person, clothing, house. In reality, the way it worked was house, clothing, person. Okay. When tsaras happened, when a situation of tsaras happened, it went to the house first, then it went to the clothing. What?
How do we know that like where do we
It's
learn
like the
that?
levels.
What do you mean?
That's the progression.
Well, first of all, in the next parsha, the second half, it flips it around. But basically what happened was, and the first generation, it was true, this stuff in the houses was mostly true for the first generation when the Jews come into the land of Israel. That like Sophie said, that the Amorites hid treasures in the house, in the walls, and when you had some kind of lesion, what would happen? Okay, let's back up a second. Pause a second. What happens if I see something on the walls of my house, red or green or something? So the first thing that if I suspect that there is tsaras, plain Jane Jew, I do not call tsaras, okay? The only person who can say that this is in fact tsaras is a Kohen. When you take a Kohen, so what will happen? Let's say we see something on the walls of the house. Okay, we're going to get the Kohen. The Kohen's like, I'm coming tomorrow at 4 p.m. What's that mean? Till then, empty the house. Empty the house, because tsaras will affect tuma on everything in the house. If it is in fact tsaras, it will make everything under the tent, everything in the confines of that house, tameh. Now, many things in our houses can be koshered, and it's not a problem. And we all know that there's many things that you cannot kosher, right? And what are the things that we cannot kosher? Earthenware vessels. So besides your grandmother's china, which is maybe really expensive, generally, when we talk about earthenware, I would say, what happens to vessels and kalim together? They become castles. When you have the Torah is saying you have earthenware vessels in your house, they're not super expensive, but they will be wasted, and you will not be able to kosher it. So take everything out of the house, and then the Kohen's going to come in, and he's going to check out the situation. Okay? If he says, yes, it's tsaras, what they will do is they will remove those stones, close up the house for a week, and then come back and see, has it spread or has it not spread? It is. If it's spread, the worst case scenario is that you have to take down the wall or even take down the whole house. But you're going to start with removing one stone and seeing if that clears up the situation. One second, question or comment?
Two questions.
Yes.
So, first, the house that has tsaras doesn't like contaminate all the things in the house?
It does.
So, like,
If what? Finish your sentence.
So
if
like,
this stuff stays in the house,
so like
and they say tameh,
the stuff will start to also show red and green. If
no.
it's contaminated,
Okay. If the stuff stays in the house, and the Kohen comes in and says, yes, that is tameh, then everything that's in the confines of that house will become tameh. Now, of those things,
before then?
exactly. But if it's taken out, that's what we're saying. This is not smallpox in your blankets. Do you know what I mean? This is a spiritual situation. So we're saying, if you trust this process, get your stuff out of here, right? Get your stuff out of here, protect it. Torah's not looking for you to just have to throw everything out. Figure out a way to protect whatever you have. What?
It's eco-friendly.
Yes.
My other question was so just because the house has tsaras, it doesn't indicate anything about the people. It could be that something was in the walls or something.
So in the first generation of the people who came into the land of Israel, so that was very often what happened. Some of the houses had tsaras in the walls, and then they found treasures. But let's all agree that not every single family that moved into a house that was existing from before had tsaras and found a treasure, right? And there's a whole conversation in Chassidus about that here we have a situation where some of the houses where, let's say, now we moved in and we put a mezuzah on the door and we started keeping Shabbos and kosher and started doing mitzvahs in this house, and that was enough for this house to change its status from being not God-friendly to yes, God-friendly, right? Some of the houses are going to have a harder situation. They're going to have a place where there's going to be tsaras on their walls, and they're going to have to figure out there's a deeper level of tuma that's in this house. It's in the walls, but what happens when you actually dig into that space? You're going to find treasures, right? So it's kind of very interesting. The place that had a lesser level of tuma, let's say, we move in, we have, we bring Shabbos candles, we bring kosher food, we bring light, and everything's fine. And sometimes the house is in such a bad state that we actually need to take parts of it off, and then when we do, specifically in that first generation, there was in fact an extra treasure in the walls, which is an interesting thing for ourselves, just as a not tangential, but kind of like, because Saras is such a weird conversation today because we don't have it, right? That there are some things in our lives that are maybe not super great, and all it takes for us to fix up that situation is to bring in some light. Okay? That's all we have to do. We just have to bring in some light, and then everything's going to be fine. And then there's some things, we're going to get regular paper towels, and then there's some things that are going to need more work. They're going to need excavating. There's going to be a midah, there's going to be a character trait, or there's going to be something it's not just, have a little farbrengen, hug, and it's all done, right? Some things are not like that. But what happens when we actually do the work of excavation where there is that deeper level of pain, or that deeper level of not okayness? When we actually do that work, then there's a real treasure waiting for us. Then once we can get to the bottom of it, then we're like in a whole different situation. Okay, but now what happens? But they have the story of Saras on the houses even after the first generation of the people who came to the land of Israel, and the Chava's point is very well taken. So let's say we have a situation. There's Saras on the house, and we go through the whole process, and we purify the house, and now it's tahar, amazing, wonderful. You wait a little bit of time, and boom. I have it on my leather jacket. I have it on my leather, on my woven materials, the wool skirt or the something, right? Then we're going to go through this whole process again. So we talk about having tsaras on your skin. That's really going to be our Chachamim tell us that is a last stage situation. First, it came to the house, and everybody in the house. We did this whole process of cleansing and purifying the house, and then what happened? Everybody in the house said, that's not my issue. That was somebody else's issue. It wasn't me. I wasn't the source of this. It was, I don't know, it was somebody else. It wasn't me, right? Then what happens when it starts hitting clothes? It's clothes a little bit more personal. It's my sweater. It's my coat. It's my jacket. It's my thing. But you borrowed it. Maybe it's not me. Maybe it's not me. Maybe it's somebody else. So we go through the whole process of purifying that. We might have to cut out part of the material. We might have to, all the whole process that the Torah talks about, all of that. And still the person has the ability to say, maybe it wasn't me. And only then will tsaras show up on a person. Only then will tsaras show up on my hand, on my wherever, right? Only then will it start to show up. And then where's my place to kid myself and say, it's not me, it's somebody else. Right? Then it's like out the window, right? Like you used up all your options. It's got to be you. And yet, the Alter Rebbe talks about the idea that Adam is coming to somebody who is very, very spiritually sensitive. Tsaras is coming to an Adam personality. It's coming to somebody who is spiritually sensitive, they're not just like, clueless in the park. They're really connected, and they're really involved, and they're really, they're an Adam. They're really they're somebody important. They're not just important, but I'm saying they got it. They're not trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. They figured it out already, right? Unlike all the rest of us. But I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to be when I grow up. Right? So an Adam is it's an Adam. And yet, and this is one thing that so this is what the Alter Rebbe is highlighting. Rav Steinsaltz points out that's why tsaras is really, it's a kind of marker for us. It's not a physical it's a physical manifestation, but it's not a physical disease. And there's some place where we could be so connected, and still when it comes to our own issues, we cannot see them. We just don't see the things that we are not getting right. And it tells us, the Talmud tells us that you could, a person who could, who can, I'm not sure how you say this in English,
Like not so.
Identify. No. I was going to say call it, but that's not. I don't think such an issue. The person who can identify something as tsaras, you can do it for everybody except for yourself. For yourself, you can't say, "Oh yeah, this is tsaras." Our self-love is so strong that we can't look at ourselves and say, maybe I was wrong about this. Maybe I got this one wrong. It's just not possible. And the thing that we talk about is that in Tanakh, we have some people who ended up getting tsaras, right? Question?
Oh, yeah, but I didn't want to interrupt
Okay.
over your point.
Oh, sorry. Right? Miriam gets tsaras, for example. What was Miriam doing? She had a valid concern about her younger brother. It was 100% a valid concern. She saw this as totally righteous, and God's like, no, right? Like you're that place that you shouldn't have said what you said. Sometimes we are so convinced of the righteousness of our behavior that we don't see that what we're doing is not correct. And what's interesting is that one of the signs of tsaras, it talks about if there is a white patch, which we know, like if you're involved with a little bit of biology, once you have white patches on skin, it's not a good sign, right? It means that something's dead there, right? You have a white patch, and then the question is if it grows hairs from there, or even a more weird situation. That doesn't make sense, right? An even weirder situation. Keep me on track, Rishi. An even weirder situation is what happens if you have this white patch. First of all, tsaras. One of the first symptoms of tsaras is that it starts to spread. If you have like a little self-contained something, maybe that's just something I need to a behavior that I need to take care of. But once it starts spreading and taking over more parts of my body, that's this is a bigger situation going on over here. And one of the things that the Torah tells us that what happens if within this dead patch of skin, you start to have live skin again. Let's say I had something, let's say I have something, and it grows and grows, and then it sort of is holding it's not growing anymore. Okay, so then maybe it's not tsaras. But if in the middle of that, part of the skin starts to live again, we're not talking about scientifically possible. We're just saying, Torah says, if it starts to live again.
Is that what's talking about the golden hairs?
Golden hairs are they're actually white hairs.
Yeah.
Oh, but it said this Chumash translates that as both white hairs and golden hairs and makes a distinction.
Right. I don't know enough about all the details, but I'm not talking about the hair. It also talks about if there's flesh, if there's living flesh in the middle of that dead patch, then that's tsaras. We don't say, oh, this is a person healing. We say this is more tsaras. And Chassidus explains that what is that symbolic of? Somebody who has a behavior that they're totally convinced is so right that they're starting to live off of that behavior. Something that started off as maybe a little bit of, I'm so righteous and I know so much, and therefore that person or those people are doing it wrong, and it's like sort of it's not my right, but it's in my area of responsibility to talk about it, or to be judgmental about it, or to whatever, right? And then I'm so convinced of the righteousness of what I'm doing, they're like, in Hebrew, we have chayas from it. That's how you say it in Yiddish. How do you say it? When you're really excited, it's like you have a chayut about it. I don't know if that's how you say it. I don't know. That's He's like, no, we don't have that kind of word. I don't know how to say it. In like Yiddishism, you would say like you have a chayas about it, like you're so passionate about it, you're so excited about it, like you're living from this behavior, which at the end of the day is wrong. It's not correct. It's really a tsaras thing. Once you're starting to like buy into the argument that you made for yourself to whitewash your behavior, and you're like, I am 100% right, I'm totally correct in this, that's an even deeper level of the situation. That's an even deeper level of the situation. Now, how do we get out of this? How do we get out of this situation? How do we get out of tsaras? How do we get out of this place? So the first thing that's very interesting is that that you need to have a Kohen come and call and take care of this person. And the Talmud actually tells us a funny scenario where you have a Kohen who's not knowledgeable, but you have plain Jane Jew who really is knowledgeable in these situations, right? Probably not plain Jane Jew, but very knowledgeable Jewish person who's learned a lot of Torah, who knows it. And what happens is the person who's super knowledgeable cannot say, oh yeah, this is Saras. They have to they bring the Kohen looks at it, the Kohen doesn't necessarily know what they're looking at, and the other guy whispers to him, it's Saras. Mm-hmm. So then he's like, it's Saras, right? The knowledgeable person can't do it. Only the Kohen is the person who can tell this person that this is Saras. Whether we're talking about on the house, on the person, on the body, on the clothing, only the Kohen could do it. What happens to the person who's told that they have Saras? They are sent. Where do they have to leave?
Outside all three camps.
They have to leave every place. In the camp, we know, like when the Jews were in the desert, they had to leave. There were 3 camps. There was a camp where the base, where the Mishkan was. We have where the Levites were. We have where the Yisraelim were. They had to go past all of that, and not only that, they couldn't sit with other Mitzoras. They had to be by themselves. Mamish isolation. Okay, they probably also didn't take their phones, and they probably had no Wi-Fi. That would be my semi-professional guess, right? There's a place where you get so caught up in so much stuff, and what the Kohen has to do is to say, time out. You need to think about this. You need to go someplace where you're not distracted by the people around you, by the events around you. You need to really think about what went down over here, and you need to think about your behavior. And the Kohen's going to leave the person alone for a week and come back in a week and check it out. And if it's spread, it's like, you clearly haven't gotten the message yet. And you're going to go back into isolation for more time. And certain kinds of tzaras, it could be twice it happened. There's a story in Tanakh about one of the kings of Israel who actually was extremely righteous, and he got tzaras, and for the rest of his life he was never out of isolation because he never saw that he was wrong about what he did. Like the tzaras goes away when we say, oh yeah, I get it. That's where my mistake was. And Chassidus explains that a Kohen is called an Isha Chesed. It's interesting because I spoke to my friend who's a Kohen. He's like, that's not like general how Kohanim are looked at. They're looked at as, easily angered and whatever. But in Chassidus, a Kohen is called an Isha Chesed, a person of great compassion. We know that Aaron was into peace and making peace between people. So an Isha Chesed, before they tell somebody, you need to be out of everything. You can't be involved in anything, not with your family, not with your community, not with your city. Once the Beis HaMikdash was built, somebody who was a Metzorah had to leave the walls of Jerusalem. They couldn't be in the city itself. It's a big deal. So the only person who could say to another Jewish person, you don't belong here, you need to be isolated, you need to get out, is going to be somebody, that it's going to pain them to do it. You take an Isha Chesed, it's not about his personality and he's like, oh yeah, man, my chance to get back at you, right? No, an Isha Chesed who's going to really be bothered and think twice and 3 times and 4 times before we tell somebody you need to isolate, and they will do everything in their power to get that person back into the community. They will do everything that they can. They will go back another time and another time and another time, and they will guide them and they will talk to them, and they will not just say, out of sight, out of mind, we don't have to worry about that guy. We're free of one person over here. The Kohen and as an Isha Chesed is somebody who's going to fight so much to make sure that every single person who has whatever issues they have are going to be able to come back into the community, and they're going to be able to be rehabilitated and to be back with the whole community. So what does this mean for us? There's a lot more. There's a lot of stuff going on in this parsha. A lot of it is details of this. Where do you have the lesions? Where do you, with here, without here, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff, right?
Having to shave all their hair was like, whoa, that sounds
That's part of the purification process is that they
have to shave all their hair.
Shave all their hair. They have all their visible hair, and they have to bring sacrifices, and they have a bird. It's so funny. It's just so interesting because why does somebody get lashon hara? There's lots of reasons why people get lashon hara. But one of the things that we talk about a lot. Why do people get tzaras? Sorry, why do people get tzaras? The most common reason that they always talk about is lashon hara, that people speak badly about other people.
Why doesn't it say that in the person?
Well, because there's other things. There's other reasons. You also get it for stealing and for being stingy and for there's other things. There's like about I think the Ibn Ezra has like 20 reasons why somebody would get tzaras. The most popular one that we talk about all the time is for lashon hara, that you speak badly, and they have no. So it's interesting. They talk about somebody who's like a miser and who doesn't want to share their stuff. So if they end up getting tzaras on their house. So like, let's say I went to somebody's house and I said, "Oh, do you have, can I borrow like 10 chairs? I'm having a party. Can I borrow chairs from you?" And they're like, "Oh no, we don't have any." And then they get tzaras on the walls of their house and all their stuff is out in the street. And you're like, "Oh, he didn't have 10 chairs." Got it, right? So there's different reasons. But one of the main thing that we know about now is because of this lashon hara, speaking badly. And part of the purification that they bring is a bird. And Rashi says, why do they bring a bird? Because the bird is constantly chirping. Mm-hmm. And what does a bird do? Tweet, 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 tweet. What, before it was known as X, what did we used to have?
Twitter.
We had Twitter. And what was it?
X.
What was it? And what were the posts that you made called? Tweets. We had Twitter and we had tweets.
Everyone was telling on themselves.
Huh?
Everyone was telling on themselves and
telling on themselves, talking about everybody else. Exactly. My point is, it was kind of funny. It's like, if you think there was any, good value going on here, just check out what you're calling yourself and then go back to the Torah and say, what did we do with these things, right? I'm sure there were plenty of good things happening. I don't know, whatever. I don't know. It was, of all the things that I was never on, that was Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem.
One of my teachers said that the Meta, which owns Facebook and Instagram and everything, like that word in Hebrew is
means
like
dead.
similar to death.
Yes. Meta, like somebody's dead. Yeah. Meta is dead. So they have to shave all their hair. They have to bring a sacrifice. They bring a bird. They bring wood from a cedar tree, which is very big, and a hyssop branch, which is a lowly branch, and water, and like a hole and string. It's a whole situation. It's a whole situation going on over here.
But I thought that was Rashi's point, that the birds that they bring
a bird, because what they did was they were chirping. They were just talking. Because it talks a lot.
They brought the type of bird that doesn't chirp as much or something.
No. They bring a bird because it chirps.
This is specifically if you're atoning for lashon hara.
No, if you have tzaras, this is the purification that goes. And it's interesting also, like, tzaras is very harsh. Like, somebody who has tzaras, as they're going out, they have to say, they are covered, and they have to say tamei tamei. They have to they have to make it such a public thing. It's like.
But I thought you were supposed to be exiled for a week. So what's happening here where you're telling everyone that you're telling?
On the way out, how do you go from here to there?
Right?
It's not it's not like, they just disappeared for a little bit and what's going on. Like, it was public. It was very public knowledge. I had a thought that flew out of my head. Tzaras, going.
Is this only if it ends up on your body? Like, if it ends up in your house, then there's a different process?
Yeah, because then you have to take the stones out, and you take out the stones and all the stones around it, and you close it for a week, and then you come back, and da-da-da-da-da. And then, if the worst case scenario is you actually have to take apart the house, but that's, I don't know how often any of this stuff happened. And for clothing also.
Why sometimes it affected people's houses or possessions versus affecting their bodies?
So the sages say that it was a progression. That means it went first to the house, then to the clothing, then to the body. It's like, strike one, strike two, strike 3.
Unless you did teshuva.
Unless you did
before it
teshuva, exactly,
got to the
exactly. Unless you really stopped it, meaning you could clear up the situation, but you didn't actually deal with the issue, and then it would move on to the next level, and eventually end up on the person. So I had a thought that I forgot, so I'm not going to try to find it. I'll remember it at 2:00 in the morning. So what does it mean for us? Right? Because we don't have tzaras today. We don't. It's not something. We're not spiritually sensitive enough that we would be affected by getting this kind of sign. It's like it was such when we talk about it, it seems like it's not subtle at all, but it really was a very subtle sign on a person's body, and you have to be spiritually sensitive to receive that. So the question is, so why do we talk about? I mean, besides in the Torah, like what does it have to say to us today? So first of all, part of it is, I think part of the message to ourselves is that it's very hard for ourselves to, I think this is not a correct English sentence, but I'll fix it up in a second. It's very hard to know on your own if you are in fact on the right track. It's very easy to convince yourself that I'm doing the right thing and I got God on my side and everything's, I'm totally right. You need to take time and you need to take space and you need to have a person that you get to do introspection with. And where do you take here the Metzorah actually gets isolated and has to sit by themselves and has to think about what they did and all that kind of stuff. But isn't it possible for us to build time into our lives and into our schedules where we think about what's going on, I'm not going to say meditate because every time I fall asleep, I think about it and it's like, it does not seem to work for me. And I'm sure that's my deficiency, but there you have it. But where's a place that we think? Where's a place that we walk without our ear pods on? We don't have a playlist in our head. We just let ourselves think about where we are and what we're doing, and are we headed in the direction that we want to be headed in? And who's the person that we check in with and say, this is what I think is going on, but maybe I'm totally kidding myself. Maybe I'm really living off my tzaras. It's become something, my self-righteous cloak has become something that I just wore myself in so much that I don't even realize that I'm off course. Is that possible? If we don't take the time to stop and to think, things happen like all of a sudden we open our eyes and it's 5 years later, it's 10 years later, and we're like, how did we get here? I have no idea how this happened. So I want to give us a bracha that it doesn't take something as drastic as tzaras. I'm not looking at it from the point that we are no longer spiritually sensitive enough to feel the effects of tzaras on our body. I feel like we are a generation that we've taught and we've learned other tools for reflection. It doesn't necessarily have to be, a white dead patch on our skin. But if we don't take the time to think and say, wait a second, where am I? Where am I going? How am I doing? Am I on the right track? Am I going where I want to be going? Am I walking with God, or am I just sort of serving myself? Then we're walking down a path that's not a good one. But when we do take the time to self-reflect, we do take the time to to think and say, where am I going and how am I going there, and what is my trajectory and how am I doing? I want to give us a bracha that we get all the blessings of peace and health and community and all the things that the person who has tzaras sort of is excluded from, and that we should be able to, with our own community, sort of make that space to think about what's going on, to understand that something that's so subtle as something that we say, it's not even an action, it's just something that we say has incredible ramifications. And what are we going to do about that? And how are we going to wake up tomorrow and strive to be a little bit better? So that's my bracha to us, that we should be honest with ourselves, and we should give ourselves a space to think and give ourselves the space to reflect and say, where am I going to do a little bit better? Where am I going to do a little bit different, stronger? And that this upcoming year should be just revealed goodness, revealed brachas, safety, security for everybody in the land of Israel. Everybody should be home safe with their families, and Mashiach, L'chaim.